Hi everybody, welcome to another edition here of the Quake Pro League. My name's Ketchup, joined by ZSX. It's going to be a good day. Last week had definitely, I think, matches that were ups and downs, some complete brutal buryings, and some matches that were significantly closer. Now, I feel like today could very much be a repeat of that. I guess, you know, only time will tell. But we're starting things off strong with rapha in Game 1. So, I mean, what a start to the day.
Sitting near you, Ketchup, is always a good day, but no, you're right. We had a pummeling last week, and that man himself is up first in rapha. And you know, looking at the leaderboards, I would say that it could be another one today. rapha's really been more than on form this stage so far, whereas Xron, as you can see here, not so much. I had some fairly decent high hopes for him coming into this stage so far, and yet doesn't seem to be working out quite the way he would expect it to either.
It's one of those things, isn't it, where Tox is looking rather impressive. I mean, like, I know he's always been playing, and it's not the kind of passion that you just sort of put down and forget about, even if you're not in Pro League. But at the same time, it's kind of one extreme or the other in that matchup. Tox securing a 3-0, kind of impressing a lot of people and remaining a threat, a serious threat, I think, for some of these players. Now, Xeniku versus Chain, 2-1. To Xeniku. You know, Xeniku's one of those players that's just consistently on the rise, and we'll be seeing Xeniku as, if memory serves, the last matchup of the day actually this week. So that's going to be an interesting one to kind of see what kind of current top form Xeniku's going to be facing. Chain able to get a map on the board, which even in these early days, you know, those individual maps that you take might mean quite a lot as you hit the end of the season. We've seen that time and time again, Dan.
Yeah, definitely, and 2-1 for a Xeniku victory. There's nothing to sniff at from Chain's point of view. Xeniku has been on fire this season so far and really finds himself in a great position high up in the leaderboard. On the flip side, obviously, Chain had an amazing time in the finals at last stage, but that was off the back of a really, really poor stage season. So it's nice to see him continuing a little bit of momentum, and it's a good victory for him. Likewise, we look at this matchup here. Sirius coming away with a 2-1 victory against Saigib. Again, well-deserved, and he is somebody that we all know has huge amounts of potential, so it's good to see him working his way into this league. And this kind of system will benefit him as he will be able to grow his game probably more than anyone else, since he is still very, very raw, but a good victory there. And then here, Ketchup, this was the pummeling that you were talking about. And I think that, I think I was told that this was a QPL record in terms of the amount of frags that we had. 70 plus across the board, and rapha just absolutely walking away with it. You know, Sib has never matched up particularly well against rapha. We've seen in the past, he just, I mean, one would never expect him to beat rapha, but there's definitely a little bit of a mental block there. His play style is a little bit sloppy. Nevertheless, moving into Drames versus Razy, another great matchup. Whilst this was a 3-0, it was very, very close across the board. And Drames had a really good final stage as well, a good finals. He's been playing pretty decently, but Raze has been cleaning it up and starting really strong here. So this was an amazing series, and once again, it was back and forth, but Razy coming out on top with that 3-1. I believe we're just getting Ketchup back as we move on.
Yeah, I'm in the back end trying to. I'm aware that there's a bit of a microphone situation with me, so I'll have to try and make sure I'm using the right one momentarily. Sorry about that if I sound terrible, but you know what? I probably sound terrible anyway on the best of days.
No.
But as we come into the next few matches here, we'll get it sorted kind of as soon as we have a window to do so. So sorry about that, folks.
And then just to wrap up last week, we had Venga versus Maxter. Another 3-0 here. Maxter coming in late to the stage, having missed the first few weeks, but it was a 3-0 to Venga. Now, it's just one of those series. I think virtually every map is pretty much separated by one frag. So whilst it was a 3-0, nothing to shy away from Max's POV, as it was incredibly well fought. And again, on the flip side to last season, Venga has been starting this stage pretty well and finds himself in a healthy spot in the leaderboard. So a lot of 3-0s throughout the day, but for the vast majority of them, apart from pretty much that rapha Sib set, it was very, very close across the board. Even Tron Toxic, it was one map that was a bit of a blowout, but the rest of them were fairly close. So good to see that either way.
I think it gets kind of goes to show how much of a brutal game Quake can be at the highest level. I mean, you could look at something as a 3-0 and think, wow, that must have been rough, and not really. I mean, you play for that 10 minutes with the exception of overtime, and the fact that it can go down to one frag here or there on the back of one simple mistake, or maybe someone else just getting that one element of an upper hand. It's just kind of like, damn, it's rough.
Exactly.
But that's why we love it. That's why we love it.
And I think Zenecu Chain was a perfect example of that. I think it was the decider map. Chain was up 5 or maybe even 6-0 and ended up losing that by 1 frag. So incredible comeback by Zenecu, which is one of those things where if you can get a stranglehold on the map and you can lock it down, you can just brutalize your opponent. Sometimes there is no way out. Similarly, as you just pointed out in that Max de Wenger set, pretty much 1 frag decided across the board. It comes down to who can effectively hit the clutch shots in the right moments. So there is that mentality, that pressure management all comes into play.
Something that's going to get tested today. Our first matchup's going to be Xron versus rapha. I feel like this is going to be kind of rough for Xron, potentially. I mean, Xron hasn't had the most consistent season so far. However, it is early days still. There's plenty more matches to get through. Yeah. But you're going after the number 1. And I got to quickly say there's a potential that Sib versus Toxic might not be happening today. I believe there are powerful storms in one of our players' areas which might cause some internet issues. So rest assured, as soon as we know what's going on with that, we will let you know. So I think we'd all love to see it, but if it can't be done, it can't be done. Sometimes it just is like that. Avec versus Strong Sage as well. A big storyline this week. Strong Sage is here. I mean, yeah, Strong Sage has been playing in as many tournaments and competitive settings as possible, so there has been a lot of Strong Sage this year, just not in the QPL, so that's going to be good for our second match.
Debut. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing him because I thought he had a great showing at the finals. He's a lovely guy. He's new to the scene as well, so that fresh blood coming through is really impressive. But not only that, as you pointed out, he's just been nerding it, man. He's so keen to make an impression, and it goes both ways. I'm sure he's gonna lay down the law here, but at the same time, will he let that pressure of the debut in the QPL get to him, and particularly going up against someone of the caliber of Avec? So I'm really interested to see that, because in practice he's been looking strong. Can he bring it on the stage today? But before that, as you said, we are starting off with rapha versus Xron. Anything I'll throw a spanner in the works is probably the earliest I've ever seen rapha play in the QPL. Now, has he fixed his sleep schedule? We'll have to see.
Depends on whether we're all on that pro gamer sleeping pattern, really, doesn't it? Now, I do believe the picks and bans are good to go, so we'll have a look at those, and we'll have a quick chat about the journey that we're going to see. Corrupted Keep, Blood Covenant, and then Veil of Nath. The clutch was taken away immediately, actually, on the side of rapha, so we're going to have the Battle of Mediums, Blood Covenant, bit more of a sort of classic experience. It's going to be mobility, it's going to be movement. Athena is taken away, and if you're against rapha, that is a very, very good decision. And then Veil. And I quite like that choice from rapha. Scalebearer on Veil can be quite overwhelming, right? I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, and he's certainly not everyone's favourite champion to fight against, but on a map like that, just someone having that champion in their back pocket could be quite a deciding factor. I think we have begun to see, as the years roll out, the importance of matchups and the importance of some champions on some maps just being so overwhelming that it's kind of an edge you want to take away. And I feel like that's kind of what we saw rapha do there in Veil. Yeah,
we're kind of falling into an interesting meta at this point in time, since heavies this season so far have fallen out of favour. As I said, I know 2 are banned, but fallen out of favour for the most part, and we're largely seeing this grouping of 6 or 7 champions that have more of a blended mobility and skill set around them. We're seeing a lot more Nyx this season as well than we saw last season. That's come back into play, so it is interesting, and it's partly because of the map dynamics and partly just the way the meta's unfolding. So that it is interesting, but there's nothing, again, massively untoward here. You would expect it. The Corrupted Keep pick's pretty standard again. Blood Covenant, Nyx is generally going to be picked up. Rapha gets the first pick, opts for the speed over the Nyx, so that's going to be I think it's a battle for Xron. Obviously, we know how powerful Nyx can be if you can get that upper hand, but when you're going up against someone as quick and as smart as rapha, that pressure against the Nyx can be really, really brutal. And then, as you said, on Veil, now the Scalebearer's gone, not a lot left. It's neither here nor there which one you prefer. The Ison obviously has a lot of good utility with that turret, but if you can build the overstack up, as we know on Veil is entirely possible, Galena can be pretty powerful. But if you take that away from her, then it loses a lot of momentum. So Yeah, not a huge amount of talking points here. I think it's fairly standard picks across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really add anything to it either. Everything's kind of safe, everything's expected, and everything makes perfect sense, as it would at this level of play. But the story that's going into this for me really is, look, rapha's the favourite. Everyone's probably expecting rapha to win this. I am no different to that. I thoroughly do think that rapha has the upper hand here, and we could very well see a 3-0. No disrespect to Xron, it's just rapha is just continuing to look at that level, and Xron has just sort of struggled to find his feet a little bit. And I think the important thing is here, just even being able to get like a single map here to just bring yourself back up in the confidence department, to just give yourself any kind of advantage going into future weeks, right? I mean, if you can take anything as a victory here, take it and make sure you earn it. But it's going to be hard to do that, I think. I feel like rapha's going to be a clear favourite.
Yeah, this is one of the few series of the day where it's fairly easy to call and could end up being a question of how many frags rather than which way the map's going to go. Just the power we've seen from rapha and some of the lackluster play coming out from Xron so far. Again, this is a player in Xron that I was slightly bigging up at the start of the season, hoping to see some really, really strong performances. He's just not found his feet, and he's been out of the scene for a little bit, so that's somewhat to be expected, and hopefully throughout the season he can grow into it. But for me, rapha comes a little bit early in that development cycle, and it should be fairly one-sided.
It's an interesting journey for a player to have, because I know that the arena FPS skill, that's not really something that ever goes away. Even if you move on and for a short time you might even start competing in other games. I know that's something that Xron was able to do over the last few years, you know, was kind of just spread your wings a little bit, as it were. But when you come back to a game like this, when everyone else has just been continuing to grind, continuing to improve, it's already a skillful game, right, where everyone is at that level, and that level just all of a sudden has gotten higher and higher, and that's something that you're going to have to get reacquainted with. Now we're jumping into the first opening 10 seconds, right? You haven't missed much. However, does look like Xron's going to have access to the LG, so that's going to be not a terrible start here, but rapha going to have that burst and actually able to get himself all the weapons that he needs straight away. So in the opening 20 seconds, rapha is in a pretty good position, and Xron, although nicely stacked a little bit, well, I say that as the flyby removes all the armor, now you have to be careful, because rapha might not even need the orb here.
Not at all. The peak is up, but Xron just going to try and play defensively. Heavy's not up for a second or two, and rapha knows exactly what's up. Takes it easy frag to open this one. Xron, again, giving away a second, and this is what we mean by the momentum. Look at the stack of rapha already. 2-0 lead, all the weapons to his name. Oof, it's already looking painful.
Just going to adjust my audio settings real quick. Apologies. I should be good to go. And, I mean, so far, rapha's just doing a rather token start of Corrupted Keep. We know how one-sided this map can be, and rapha's going to lay that pressure on thick. So the ball's now going to be in Xron's court. A nice opportunity there to take away the heavy. You know, if you're going to mount any kind of comeback, taking that access away is going to be really important. And it actually looks like Xron should be able to secure a frag. No, rapha finds it. You see that reaction from rapha. Even he was shocked at how much damage that opening rocket did.
But I'm actually a little bit surprised rapha didn't bully his way onto that heavy a bit more aggressively. Allowed that one to get away, and it has actually allowed Xron to get back into this map already. As you say, actually winning out on that previous fight somehow, and getting away with absolutely nothing to work with. At the same time, he will get a little bit of time here to build back his stack up and keep the pressure on to Xron. That aggression from Xron still coming out. He himself looking very, very healthy, catching rapha through the TP and gets himself on the board with a little bit of time before this next mega. rapha's going to push his way on in, but maybe mistiming this one. Instead decides to go away, get that upper ground, takes the LG away, continues on the aggression. Quite a messy start for both sides though, Ketchup.
What? Okay, I guess we'll take that happily as we go into the rest of it. Xron taking a bit of damage fresh off as rapha reappears and tries to... Oh! Never mind. That one hurt. And there's a big delay between those items, right? Oh! Watching that through Xron's point of view, that rocket was millimeters away from hitting him out of the teleporter.
Now we've got a big split between the major items as well. So rapha doing what he should, which is taking the high ground, trying to cut off the angles, also trying to cut off access to the weaponry and any potential aggressive moves that Xron might be able to pull, putting a further delay between the two major items, and now it comes down to getting that chip damage and managing your entryway into this mega room.
Xron's going to have to try and protect this Mega as much as he can, but rapha, confident in the stack and confident in the push, wasn't quite able to get that item. Now Xron stuck in a position where, yeah, you have just picked up a Mega, but you're going to take a lot of exit damage, and there's not a lot of armor to your name to retreat to. And rapha's going to know that. Now, rapha trying to get some of that extra damage. Here comes the Pika. But nothing Xron can do to shut down that heavy. Now, he is going to be able to pick up a light armor near Rocket, but that's all he's going to get. And to be fair, given the situation, and I mean, the fact that he stuck around to try and fight that, he kind of did as much damage as he could. The problem is, looks like a snowball effect could be starting, because how is Xron going to get out of this?
Yeah, I like what rapha's doing as well, in that he's playing a slightly longer game here. What I mean by that is that he could go aggressive and really force the issue onto Xron, but at the same time, he's doing his stack preservation. So you can see him trying to play this mid-range game where Xron has absolutely no chance. He doesn't want to push through these entryways into any potential sticky situations with rockets. He's trying to manage Xron's stack and keeping it at bay. So it's a really, really nice playstyle. He even gave up the previous Mega just to preserve his own stack.
Speaking of stack, though, it's one that rapha's going to be in a better position to defend here as the heavy's going to spawn. Xron kind of knows, fresh off the spawn, all I had is an LG. I can't really jump down and take that shotgun because I'm going to take damage doing that anyway.
Yeah.
Had no choice but to sort of watch from afar as rapha takes it, because, I mean, what else are you supposed to do? And this is that horrible, horrible position, right? You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Your opponent has all the momentum, they've got all the weapons, they've got all the stack, and it leaves nothing for you, which is why it can be kind of tricky to mount a comeback, especially if the opponent is carefully managing those timers, you know, so even if you do manage to secure a frag, are they going to be able to respawn and maybe take something before you? Rapha kind of just flying around this map doing what he wants at the moment, and Xron not able to do much off the back of it.
Absolutely nothing. This is where it looks really, really painful, because as we said at the start, unless Xron goes all in and hits some miracle shots, the stack that rapha's playing with, the positions he's taking, it's almost impossible to break that blockade with the full rotation he's got underway. You can see Xron here desperately trying to steal it away, but milliseconds means he falls out with that one. So 10-2 catch up with 4 minutes to play. I mean, there's not really much at this stage Xron could do to even look to get a frag, let alone get back into this one.
Yeah, if there was any potential game-changing moment, it probably would have been at that heavy, but Xron just died right before he was able to get his hands on it, right? Being able to get a frag there, stop one of those items. Whoa, that orb nearly did a lot of damage. I was watching that through Xron's point of view. It only barely hit the gateway rather than going through it. But yeah, this is one of those situations that it's just going to take time to bring yourself back into it. Unfortunately, that time is not going to be on Xron's side, as rapha has more health, is doing more of this damage, eventually going to go down. And this is going to be one of those rough final few minutes, I think, because now Xron has no choice. It's that horrible situation, Dan, where it's like, right, I got no time. I got to make something happen. So, more often than not, the frags just add up. Like, every frag from this point on is going to be kind of just unnecessary and bonus. You know, I feel like the map has already been decided.
Yes, it has. Feel kind of bad for saying it, as I did in the intro. It was a case of how many frags, but not who's going to win the map. And you can see exactly why here. Xron going in aggressively, but look how much of his stack he is losing to try even get this frag. It is nice, but one of these things where it's a consolation frag at this point.
The damage is done. So for the remaining 3 minutes, Xron, no choice but just sort of keep yourself warmed up, really. You know, I don't want to come across as patronizing in any way, but when you're in this situation, you've got to play that map through to completion. You know the opponent's won. Not much else you can do, right? Just try and get yourself ready for the next few maps, because there's still an opportunity to get something done. Exactly,
and a bit of momentum going into the next map will definitely help to get a few frags on the board, but rapha actually shuts it down. Once again, 17-3, we're already at that 20 frag mark with 2.5 minutes to go. You can play Corrupt to keep slow, you can play it in a managed style and see some really low score lines, but both of these players came out to fight. And once again, I really do enjoy the way Rapha played this, in that it's been a bloodbath, but it's been a controlled bloodbath from Rapha's point of view. It's been about positioning, and it's been about stack management. He's just done that to perfection, as we know he can.
Rest assured, stream, we are in the process of trying to sort out the audio issue. I'm aware that my microphone probably does not sound very good now, but it won't be like that for long. Don't you worry about it. But hey, you know, what else are we going to talk about for these remaining 2 minutes? As we close out this map, 20-4 currently, and kind of feels like it's only going to go up from there as Rapha's going to get some more. And what is it with Rapha these last 2 weeks? The frag machine, it seems.
He's, yeah, really enjoying himself at the moment and looking good to boot. This is also an EU server, so we're going on to NA server next. Well, I'm just picking up 1 or 2 frags towards the end to bring himself back into, I don't want to say respectable distance, but less brutal distance.
Ron's just going to keep himself nice and going. Not much else you can do, as we've said before, but I feel like it's just this absolute commitment by Rapha. And it's something about Rapha that's always been so scary, is that even when that map is done, at no point, I know we've said this so many times, but it just continues to be the situation. There's just never a moment's peace. There could be the map could be decided in the first 2 minutes, and Rapha is still going to play that remaining 8 minutes. Absolute focus, never going to let it go. And I feel like it's that absolute determination that just keeps him as dangerous as he is. Oh, can't even get that one. What a shame. But what do you do against a player like this, where there's not a moment's peace? Stressed out going into the next map, it just keeps on going. It's like, damn, can I play this game, please?
Yeah, it is a feels bad moment, but you know, you have to credit Xron as well. And
Yeah.
he didn't play with himself, that's for sure. He did try and go toe to toe. Definitely not the right choice on reflection, but at the same time, he went through it. Wasn't to be map 1. Very hard map to play from behind for up to keep. So moving on to map now with Railed, you can play a distance game. You can then manage the tempo of the game a little bit better. That should serve on moving forward as well. We know he is very strong with the rail, and he can play creatively, he can play a bit more defensively, which he definitely needs to do. He can't let Rapha just take that map control, cycle the items. He has to force himself into it, and he's going to stand a little bit more of a chance. But that was brutal.
But sometimes it can be. You know, how long has Corrupted Keep been in this game at this point? And it feels like some maps change and some stay the same. Corrupted Keep definitely going to be the latter. So, I mean, it's a situation that you're used to, whether you're just doing it in ranked, whether it's scrims with other players in the Pro League, or whether it's the Pro League itself. It's like, you're going to have those maps where something like this, which is super combat heavy, sometimes it's just completely and utterly one-sided. And, you know, Rapha's the kind of player that, with that momentum and with that map control, that is where the snowball is kind of at its most optimal. And just a display of complete fearlessness. Now, you kind of quite rightly pointed out, right? We're going into a complete change of pace with Blood Covenant. It's going to be a larger map. The weaponry is going to be different. The actual, you know, how the 2 players are going to go is going to be different. And the champions themselves. It's going to be a battle of utility, and maybe Xron able to be a bit more slippery and harder to pin down. I feel like if you're against someone like Rapha, who, especially not having the Athena, has now opted for the Anarchy, so it's still going to be high octane, it's going to be fast, and you know that when Rapha gets that, you know, I know Flea often refers to it as that liquid diesel engine, like once it's going, it's very hard to stop, and we've seen that so many times. This is where Nyx can maybe help that just a little bit, because if you get pinned down, you can get out, and an extra life, perhaps.
I mean, the obvious thing we have to talk about here is just the difference in being able to control that mid-ground. The fact that Nyx can play both sides of the map very efficiently. Obviously, the Anarchy has the speed, but much more difficult to get across and play that high-level game. So that's what the Nyx will want to do, is to try and get that rail, play around the rail area, around the bridge area, use the double jump to get across, and just keep his distance from the Anarchy. Because if the Anarchy does get that full stack with the injector boot, chase that next down and keep the pressure on, which is going to be painful. And expect Rapha to use a lot of kind of HMG and kind of mid-range weaponry to try and keep the Nyx's stack in check, force up the Ghost Walk, and then go in for the kill. So the game plan for Rapha is fairly simple. It's about how can Xron play around it. So he has to keep his focus strong, keep a track of where Rapha is. Obviously, he wants to keep a fullback on one of the items, but at the very least, he needs to keep himself healthy with those 2 green armors and play the distance game.
So I'm just sort of micromanaging behind the scenes here as we try and obviously fix the old microphone situation. But I hope that this is a nice change of pace maybe for Xron. That final map is definitely more akin to a Corrupted Keep than a Blood Covenant, so if there's any change of pace or any significant switch up in the map, this is the one that it's going to allow, essentially. But it's the consistency from Rapha that's always scary. You know, we can talk over and over again about how this champion matchup's going to be different, this map's going to be different, but it's nothing that Rapha hasn't seen before. So the ball's very much going to be in Xron's court to just try and make something happen. Yeah, it was a rough first map, it happens. You got to kind of just go into this map with a fresh mindset, something that Quake pros are, I think, really, really good at, is just kind of disregarding the previous results and just going into the new map with a fresh mind. I feel it's got to be such an important element to the mental game, because I think confidence and being confident in yourself, that's a huge part of Quake to begin with, because if you don't believe you can do it, how are you supposed to do it?
Yeah, exactly, and that's actually probably one of the hardest things going up against someone in the caliber of Rapha's bracket. You know, it's just having that self-belief that you can actually take something away from this. It's very easy to go in self-defeatist and then almost play not to lose, which is not the way you're ever going to win up against Rapha. You have to play to win, but at the same time, when you are an X against an Anarchy on this particular map, you have to play self-preservation.
Oh, I believe we are actually throwing to a quick break. I'm assuming it's to fix a few back-end things. So we're going to be right back. We're going to continue these matches. Apologies, big apologies. We'll be back in a few minutes. Hi everyone, we're back. Sorry about that, but apparently we should be good to go now. So we'll just forget the intro happened and we'll just jump right back in. And as soon as we're good to go with the second map here between Rapha and Xron, we'll be jumping right into it. Sorry for the inconvenience and thank you very much for your patience. Fingers crossed, the rest of the day, Dan, goes smooth as silk.
I mean, it's the QPL. That's not happening, mate. It's
Wishful thinking, my friend. That's what it's all about.
Oh, we're back. We're back in it. But you're back in the room. We're back in the game. Yeah, and we've just had a lovely first game as well to warm down from. 22 to 8, 30 frags already. Will it break last week's record? Looking at the map picks, I can say no. I don't expect the second map to be anywhere near as brutal. At least I hope not, because if it is, then it's only one way. It's only going to be anarchy. So hopefully this one is reined in just a little bit.
As kind of like we said before this break and before we went, this is that chance for Xron to just apply something rather different. You know, that first map was a wash, but it's a map that allows for that. I think on the opposite end, one of the reasons I think the Scale Bearer being banned was a really good choice is because if the Scale Bearer made it through and Xron was able to pick it, which I'm confident that Xron probably would have picked that, if that was something that made it into the picks and bans, we'd probably be sitting here talking about how, hey, look, of all three of these maps, if there's a chance for Xron to do some serious damage, that would have been the one. But the threat of that wasn't even allowed to exist because Rapha just went, no, get rid of it. Don't want to deal with it. So both players are ready. We're now jumping in. The warm-up is coming to a close, and our second map between Xron and Rapha is about to begin. Thank you so much for your patience, and hopefully it's up from here.
I see.
There's only one way catch up. Of course, that's going to be up. And it's got to be up for Xron as well. There's nothing can be more brutal than that first map. Moving in to Blood Covenant. Nick's going on already with that nice rail from below. Second one as well.
Nice.
Rapha sticking around. He's already popped the inject. So that's a good start from Xron. Rapha, though, does have that Mega to fall back on. So not the end of the world. And he has the timing and a big split between the two major items.
It was a really good opening play. You know, starting off by kind of just leaving it. And then really knowing that even if I take this damage, I have so much stack to fall back on. And then at the same time, it's going to nicely put a split between these two items. So a pretty decent little opening strategy here. Rapha able to now tank more rails thanks to that heavy being picked up and able to be on the chase. That delay that we just talked about, Xron. Oh, narrowly delaying going up the jump pad to avoid what would have been pretty much a guaranteed direct. Direct, though, comes out to play. That was ridiculous.
Rapha a little bit too quick. Xron doesn't have the angle just to finish him off. That was a really nice play by Xron. A little bit messy from both sides. Lovely rail from below. And this is what we talked about catch-up, is that rail. Playing that high ground, playing that rail. That's what he has to do to counter the anarchy. So it's been a really good start by Xron. Some slippery moments. Nearly got that opening frag, but he's playing it strong so far.
Rapha choosing to disengage. You know, I think so many players would have been tempted, you know, knowing that Heavy's going to appear, trying to take it away. But Rapha playing it the safe way and the smart way. There's so many elements for me to just bring myself back up to healthy without having to put myself in harm's way. When I pick up the Heavy, I'm going to be stuck in no man's land. And now look, you know, all because of what he was able to build up, has been able to do so much damage to keep Xron away from the item. Now he's heavily stacked, and Xron can't really contest any of them. So that one element of patience, you know, truly playing that long game and not looking for unnecessary opening frags if it means there's a chance you're going down yourself.
Exactly, but this is the life of a Nyx, although Rapha catches him coming through that doorway instantly. Xron actually decides against popping the Ghost Walk, realizing he probably was dead anyway. So not the end of the world, because now if he does get caught a second time, he can get away, but he doesn't have that rail to work with, and Rapha is pressuring hard. Xron gets away, but with nothing to his name.
Assuming that the Mega was going to be in play here. Xron trying to steal it, but the perfect timing. Another 100 damage. Xron had no choice but to go for a last-ditch effort. 180 on that rail. Not quite able to land the shot, but I mean, in that situation, had to be done. 2-0 now for Rapha. And he played so calculated and careful these opening 2.5 minutes, and it's led to what is now starting to trickle into more frags.
Yeah, the only way I like that play that Xron just did is if he can make something off it. So it looks like he's played that long game. He knew he was going to die, But coming through, stealing that item, getting the rocket means he has got himself back into this game, but that rail is actually really crippling for Xron. He cannot afford to have these unreturned trades. So kind of like the play, obviously he gives up a frag, but it is at the benefit of playing that longer game. Challenge now is, can he get the better of rapha with the distance game? Because rapha is just the master of this chip damage. Once again, another 100 unreturned damage from those 2 bouts of Tri-Bolt. Really well played by rapha, and here comes that heavy machine gun we talked about in the pre-game. rapha just managing the Nyx from distance expertly, and this is the area the Nyx just cannot afford to lose out on.
Nice!
Xron is just getting picked apart by rapha, read like a book.
And it's certainly not the first time that a little bit of damage has kind of forced Xron into an unfavorable position on the map, almost where it looks like he gets stuck. That rail hitting its mark there off the knockback of the rocket, that was a trade you definitely wanted to take. However, Xron actually sticking around here. The inject is going to be ready, but we're going to have Ghost Walk as well. No need to push forward once more. We're going to trade item for item. rapha with the inject in hand, however, is going to sort of benefit this fight. And we force out that Ghost Walk. Xron pushes forward, no choice but to use it. Has no choice. But where do we go from here? Looks like we're still aware. Oh, right, as rapha has the Tri-Bolt out, here comes Xron with the peak. So that is going to be some bonus damage. Is it going to be enough to mount something significant here? As Heavy's going to be our next challenge. Xron, oh, rapha knew a million years ago that's where Xron was going to be. And now Xron forced to retreat again.
And what is so amazing about the way rapha's playing this so far is he's using the speed to reposition and get into angles early, and then effectively just reading Xron's movement to connect his rails. In any positions where he's not 100% confident of where Xron's going to be, he switches to the Tri-Bolt, just like this. He spams it out. He doesn't know exactly that he's going to get the earlier rail. He'll just make sure he does any damage before using his speed to get away and close out any angles. So it's just incredible map management by rapha at this point in time. Flying into Xron as well. He knows he's got that inject. Quite happy to take that damage. Xron's got the high ground, but no items to work with.
The speed has been so multi-layered for rapha. It is that instant repositioning that you mentioned, but at the same time, when it's time to run towards an item, rapha just has such an advantage knowing, even in that situation, right, I'm going to take heavy, no way Xron's getting there first. Like, this is my item and this is my advantage. Xron, the rocket out, not able to get anything significant there. And the timer is starting to count down, you know, the long game. Blood Covenant, you know, you can have, it really can be either or when it comes to how many frags you're going to get. In this instance, the way that rapha is just forcing the pace to unfold, it's going to become even harder for Xron because, yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot, right? All you got to do is get 3 frags in 4 minutes, but with how this match has gone, so much easier said than done. Now, there's a good rail, but again, rapha is able to retreat, and there's no way Xron's going to catch him in time.
No, but he also knows the item timings. Xron obviously took both of them, so now it's his big opportunity to try and make something happen. Can't connect with any damage from below. rapha's just managing the high ground here. rapha's been the one playing more like the Nyx in terms of managing this high ground. And once again, the Tri-Bolt comes out to cut off any sort of advantage from Xron. Sticks around, he even reads the Ghost Walk. Incredible by rapha and the follow-up, and this is where it can get dirty. Xron trapped over by that Mega. Oh, lovely little double jump there to get away, but at what cost? He's got nothing to work with. He's not even going to risk stealing away that heavy just because the Ghost Walk isn't up. And whilst there's 3 minutes to go, Ketchup, it's hard to see what Xron can do. This is the big turning point. rapha's second late. The double jump skirting away, managing the damage, but just look how low Xron is. And there we go, 6-0.
Even small little details down to that delayed rocket placement, expecting the wall jump, which did inevitably come. Not able to secure anything there as rapha gets a last minute rail. And this is where you don't want to be. A slow game it was. 6 minutes and only 3 frags had happened. One element where Xron gets... It was right near rocket and it was coming out the other side of the Ghost Walk. You then know that Nyx is going to spawn somewhere nearby with no Ghost Walk. You're toast. And rapha did the right thing by just going completely in, getting those 2 extra frags, and here we are.
I'm going to echo myself again, but what I just loved about the way rapha's played both these games, in fact, is just a shift, almost a shift in strategy a little bit from the way he traditionally plays. Well, what a rail that was. Towards positioning and map management as opposed to just outright control and just suffocation. That's more what he's known for, which is that speed and managing of both items, particularly on this map. We can see he was using that speed to maintain positioning. He was quite happy, as again, right here, to continually give away items because he knew he would do a sufficient damage and maintain sufficient positioning to completely nullify the pickup, but also to make sure he can get a pickup cleanly following that. Playing the Anarchy on this map with the pressure he had, he could have quite easily barreled through and tried to steamroll both items, but doing so, he would have left himself vulnerable. So once again, he was more about reading his opponent, trolling his opponent, and just outright bullying him. And it's shown. I don't think there's been a real single time where Xron looked like he could have got a frag in this particular map. He might do now, because rapha's a little bit trapped, but once again, rapha comes out on top to make it 9-0.
Must be a scary thing in this position. You're fighting someone who is just so careful, so calculated. They're not going to put themselves in the situation unless they're confident they can, come off the other side of it much better off. And 9-0, yet to get a single frag. 10-0, rapha just continuing the sheer domination, similar to what we saw last week, although, not quite as extreme. It's still a comfortable win. And now we're going on to the third map. Xron, I mean, there's got to be some magic inside that's coming out, otherwise it's going to be a clean 3-0 at this rate.
Yeah, without sounding this disrespectful here and saying it's only Xron, this is some of the scariest play we've seen from rapha, just because it's how calculated he is and how effectively he's reading his opponents. Again, referencing last week against Sid, that was just a bloodbath. I think it was a great spectacle, but in terms of strategy, it is what it was. With this, strategically, he showed a lot of respect to Xron and just outplayed him in every department. That's what was really scary for me.
And it's kind of like you said, you look at the battle of these two champions. I think normally these kind of matchups become a little bit more aggressive, especially seeing as, if you're really good at controlling spawns, if you can get a read on people, if you have great control of those items and your opponent doesn't, it can be a very different affair to the one that we just saw. Normally it's going to be hyper aggressive. I think if we were looking at someone like a Razy, for example, in that matchup, we probably would have seen a little bit more just pushing and sheer brute force.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas the second rapha's behind the wheel, it's just not his style. Everything is careful. And in a game like this, when your opponent takes very little risks and still manages to pull off a performance like the one that we just saw, it was just completely just looking for that opportunity to explode. I mean, even on these replays, didn't quite see it, but there was about sort of 5.5 minutes, 6 minutes on the clock, and it was still only really a 3-frag game. There was every opportunity for Xron to maybe get something going, but then the absolute shifting point was getting the decision on that reappear right near the rocket.
Yeah.
Ghost Walk's gone, you've just been fragged. rapha now knows you're going to spawn somewhere with no armor, you've got no Ghost Walk, and that was just the complete tipping point, and rapha took full advantage.
Gotta remember, rapha first picked the Anarchy in this particular matchup, almost knowing, if not knowing, that Xron was going to counter it with the Nick. So he had a game plan, he executed it absolutely perfectly, and not only that, just some of the shots with the rail that rapha was hitting in this matchup were ridiculous from his point of view. So he outgunned and out-strategized Xron in this match, and 12-0, we said it was a 3-0 game 5-6 minutes in. It descended into absolute chaos, but the way in which rapha managed this, it did feel like a 12-20 point game, because it never felt like Xron really had a chance. He was getting items, but that was because rapha was allowing it. It was in his plan for you to get the items, and he was then going to close the gap thereafter. So phenomenal performance from rapha.
We're jumping into the third map, and this is where I kind of want to rewind and sort of rediscuss those picks and bans, because with how rapha has been playing, you mentioned it's the strategy. It's just the game plan that is the most impressive thing that we've seen from rapha so far. It kind of feels like rapha removed an element of, I don't want to use the word random, it's definitely not that word, but it's an element where it's less about Quake and it can be more about the champion. So the clutch was taken away. The big one, Scale Bearer. If we were able to see Scale Bearer on Veil, we'd probably be talking about how, hey, that's quite an advantage for Xron to have if he was able to get that champion in there. And just the possibility itself was removed, where Rapha is eliminating any extra element that will just change the game of Quake. You know what I mean? And that sounds really strange, but I just think he's trying to keep things as traditional as possible. And now we're playing Vale with Galena versus Ison. That's a much more standard affair. You know, that's much more of just a regular game of Vale rather than just having to worry about massive stack, hyper aggression, situations that can be kind of unfolded just by someone spawning next to a correct weapon or something, and obviously knowing that Xron is a skilled enough player to take full advantage of whatever is brought forward for him. So this final map, I think, heavily favors Rapha just because of a careful ban.
Yeah, no, that's the whole point of Champions, right? They introduce new dynamics to the game, and so Rapha is one of the best players, as you just rightly said, in terms of ensuring the draft goes in his favor, or at least nullifies any potential discrepancies in which the way in which the game should be played. And if we think back to earlier stages, it was generally those matchups, you rightly put it out, that adds that chaos factor with a scale bearer or these heavy champions that turns into a bit more of a brawl, where Rapha sometimes lost. Particularly actually on map like Vale, where I think it was probably his worst performing map, despite him actually very much enjoying that map. So yes, definitely calculated in that aspect as well.
Well, we're jumping off with a fresh start on this final map, though. Rapha continuing to push. Oh, that rocket jump was delicious. And that's one hell of a way to start things off, though. Rapha early in control and in position for really sort of both of these items. He's trying to keep Xron in a terrible position. That is going to be some information for Xron. Might slightly assist in the timing, but I don't think it really matters. It did at least allow him to position himself, knowing that he was set up a rail there. Rapha very weak, and there it is!
He actually stole that mega. That was crazy. I really like the play from Rapha, but that was crazy by Xron. So back into this map, 1-1, minute into it. Xron with that rail, desperately trying to slow the tempo down. He doesn't have much to his name right now, missing out on the rail as well, allowing Rapha a free pickup. He'll definitely come bullying his way through here. Lovely cut off from Xron with the timing as well. There's just not enough time in place to get round. Lovely defensive play from Xron. He's done a lot of damage to Rapha, who does get the frag, but will probably die on the follow-up here.
These defensive rockets, though, I'm not so sure. Xron was hungry to try and take that. Has a rail in hand. That rail would have secured a third frag there for Rapha in a situation that was almost completely unsurvivable. But Xron, I think... Oh, there's the positioning, catching him off guard.
Nice.
There you going. 2-2. However, Rapha, pretty decent spawn there, actually. Doesn't have a lot of weaponry, but at the very least, he's in position for that mega straight away. And the turret's still there, too. So Xron has a lot of work to do. Forced to retreat here. Only a little bit to recover from. However, this is a scary position for Rockets. Xron going out of his way to really make sure we can hit these rails. And hang on a minute, does he get it? Oh, there's the totem. Oh,
Why are you railing that? I mean, he hits the shot, but Rapha had 1 health. It's a little bit of an overkill there. Double rail coming out this time. Xron's connecting with his rails, but Rapha is just going plus forward there. I thought it was a teabag going to come out, but instead it was just using the jump pad. Timmy, the turret does a little bit of damage off the spawn as well, giving Rapha that information. But Xron does get away for now.
And okay. It looks like if there's any of those maps that are giving Xron a bit more of a fighting chance, it has been this one so far, keeping things nice and close, 3-4. I mean, could easily shift, and these rails have been a massive element of keeping Xron in the fight. I mean, Rapha is never as stacked as he wants to be. These last-minute shots, however, a bit of a rail 1v1 here. No really significant damage actually landed during that exchange. I think about 5 or so rails were fired in total. Xron trying to get that exit damage, and he will secure now. Looks like it's going to be item first. A delay between the two, so the likelihood of heavy is pretty big. And again, these rails, they are keeping Xron going.
Xron's hitting 66%, Rapha's hitting 12. So there's the big discrepancy so far. Rapha now has to try and defend this high ground, but he's only got an LG to work with, so will be working himself away. He needs to get that rocket. That's been a definitive weapon for him so far. I think Xron's basically given up trying to get an overstack right now, just using it in game. Or sorry, in combat, should I say. He has both those items on rotation now. Long split between the two. Rapha's going to make himself known at this next heavy, but he won't be able to pick it up. At least trying to just hit some sort of damage before Ron can take it away. But he's done more than that. In fact, he couldn't even get a frag. How much damage has Rapha done from the low ground? He's even won himself that item.
The read on the rocket as well! Oh, good lord, Rapha! And this is that element of just understanding your opponent, right? Making a perfect read. An element of Xron has been constantly slipping into those positions for surprise rails, and Rapha just keeping that avenue safe. If you're gonna have a rail there and you're gonna try and repeat what you did to me a couple of times ago, then here comes this rocket. And he's just being so much more careful, even right here. He's being
greedy,
so much more careful, and Xron, yeah, definitely being a little bit overzealous here.
Yeah, those last two frags, maybe even a third frag here, just so greedy from Ron. Somehow he gets the frag, he's just not missing, but any one of these rails misses, he's giving the map away to Rapha. So wait, you know, I don't really like these pushes. Yes, he's connecting, but they're not the right decisions. He's playing Instagib right now. He's shot more rails than he's shot rockets. It's insane.
But also risky.
Oh yeah.
The rail, the eternal crowd pleaser and many people's favorite weapon, but it's such the double-edged sword where if those rails are connecting, happy days. You're doing tons of damage, you're making it a lot more difficult for your opponent, but if even one of those misses, especially on a map like this, it's a very punishing affair, and that's something that Rapha's always going to keep in mind, right? I've heard players in the past say, look, if someone's hitting a bunch of rails and they're super reliant on that rail, yeah, you might have to be a little bit more careful around those corners or something, but they can't hit them all. You know, surely there's got to be a moment where that one miss, that changes the tide. Now, Xron looking for the defensive play, but nowhere to run.
I love the fact that Raph has given up railing. He's just said, fuck this. I'm going with the tri-bolt. I can't hit a rail to save my life. As I say that, he does connect with one.
It's a hallmark of the pro player though, right? Like on the fly, sometimes you're going to have a map and you just can't hit stuff. Well, at least you've got all these other weapons to use. So if Rapha, there comes another rail, not quite able to hit the mark. But you don't 100% need to, and there's that tri-bolt once again. Oh, Xron getting, on the rail to finish the job.
Like, we jest, but that is definitely part of the reason he's using the tri-bolt. Xron is out-railing him. Rapha's not really hitting any rails in these engagements. So he's just switching to a slightly more defensive strategy of spamming out the tri-bolt. And because Xron is trying desperately to open up these angles for rails, he's eating it all. So it's working remarkably. And what was a nice lead from Xron is now a 9-5 lead for Rapha. And Xron's lost self-awareness of when the items are as well. So Rapha's not letting his control slip whatsoever.
It's all about adaptability. Plans change. You might go into a map expecting it to go one way, but if it doesn't, I think rather than, we've seen that from players in the past, right? Some might sort of stubbornly kind of try to force the issue and let things go the way that they were quote unquote supposed to, but if things change in the middle of a map and something's just not hitting its mark like you want it to, then this is where I think a player becomes even scarier at this level of competition. How did that rocket do 96? Rapha with the placement. Good lord.
Look at the stack of Rapha. He's read it like a book again, just flying through this doorway. And yeah, it does feel like this map is pretty much over now. Another read from Rapha off the spawn here will be an easy frag. Xron might hit a rail, which he does. That opens up the door for some aggression, but he's not going to spawn in the right position to get anywhere near this mega. Now, there really is no looking back, and it kind of just, it does fall back to how greedy Xron was with the rail. It was his saving grace, but Rapha, being a champion, used that advantage against him. He goaded him into these positions to try and hit rails, but in doing so, Xron was walking around the map just eating spam. And eventually, he was getting so weak from that, Rapha could push in, finish him off with any sort of weaponry that he had at his disposal, and also then use that breathing space to maintain control of the items. Remember back to when Xron had control, he had that rotation down. Xron has 4 heavies and 5 megas. He hasn't touched a major item in the last 4 or 5 minutes. And you know, once again, Rapha adjusted to how Xron was playing, and it's been one-way traffic.
At this point, it's going to be just another day at the office for Rapha. The 3-0. Every map was just looking so one-sided for rapha. There were signs of life here on Veil, but it's kind of as you just said, it's the instant adaptability that Xron was not able to get that upper hand from. You know, this element of the player versus player, especially in a 1v1 esport. It's always about just trying to get that next level, right? Things change, great. Rapha's adapted, now it's been Xron's turn. Not exactly the same kind of situation.
Well, Xron is hitting 60% rail and he's shot nearly 65 rails, and yet he is losing 16-6. It just goes to show that at the end of the day, the strategy is always going to win out. And yes, this is why it makes like someone like Kilson so damn scary, because he's hitting that level of rail, but compounding it with the right decisions, the timing, the strategy, and the positioning. Whereas, unfortunately for Xron today, he only had one of those components, which was the rail. Nothing else really clicked. So, you know, this is what we expected from the start, which a dominant victory from rapha. But I think we've nearly broken that 70 frag mark for the second week in a row in a series of rapha. He is, he's looking really scary, Ketchup.
Yeah, are we going to reach a point where the three highest fragging series are all going to belong to rapha? Like if we're looking at the top three, perhaps. It's unfortunate, you know, because yeah, that first map kind of just corrupted keep things and rapha playing the way that we know and love. The second map was that one split second, that change right as you get fragged coming out of the Ghost Walk, and then that gives rapha that moment to explode until Xron's able to get a hold of another one. So that was like a scary turning point. And then this one, an impressive showing of the mental strength, I think, of rapha, and that's the big thing I want to take away here. It's rapha just played so phenomenally well and just kind of showcased what he's always able to bring to the table, because we saw three very different game plans on all three maps, but at the same time we would kind of see a side of rapha that had to be tested. I think rapha was tested in that third map, because we get to see what happens when your rails aren't hitting, what happens when things aren't exactly going to plan. You know, it was early days, there was time to adapt. Rapha did in fact make the switch and started using different weapons, and not only using different weapons but just checking Xron on those corners. You know, you said it yourself, how many pieces of just straight up spam did Xron actually just walk into and take loads of damage? You don't really see that. And so many players are normally careful, but Xron was getting so much mileage out of just hitting that secret little angle, catching rapha by surprise, hitting the 60% or so rail that he was working on. But that only worked for so long, and rapha, I think, impressed a lot of us today.
Oh, I mean, strategy-wise, he was incredibly scary, and particularly on that last map, as we just said, the way he adjusted his strategy, played around the tri-bolt and the spam because of how Xron was playing and slightly overexposing himself to hit some of these rails. You can see that 3,000 damage of the rail is just nuts. But what rapha did is that he manufactured these positions to make sure he was consistently dealing more damage in spite of getting outrailed, and he hits the shots he should hit. So any angles, any finishing kills where Xron was trying to get away, rapha still hit it. He just wasn't hitting the slightly harder shots or some of these peak rails that he was doing in previous maps. And just look at those scorelines once again, 22, 12, 19. Like, Xron got manhandled today, and once again, just the strategy from rapha, particularly on maps 1 and 2, were just incredibly impressive.
Oh, looks like the early start time for rapha didn't really make a difference, did it?
Nope.
It was a complete bloodlust, and surely, you know, we're gonna slow things down a bit as the future weeks go. But these last 2 weeks and just how many high fragging maps he was able to obtain, it's rather scary form. But the scarier thing today, other than the actual frag count, was the strategy and the mind games, right, and the mental fortitude, and that's all the stuff that makes a great Quake player who they are. Anyway, we're gonna go for a quick break. We'll come back with our next matchup of the day, and we get to see the debut of Strong Sage here in the QPL. So thank you so much for everything. We're back in a few minutes with more Quake.